Today we're looking at Private Reserve's Blue Suede. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Private Reserve's Blue Suede is kind of a teal color, or not quite turquoise. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, what I do is I do my writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Fountain Pen Revolution Himalaya with their flex nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, I put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And it runs from the water. There's barely anything that's actually left until we see that green and then the blue. There is a very hint of a light peppermint green color at the bottom though. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it in the water, and there is no difference between these two. So I expect no water resilience at all. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before I test it. Looking at the highlighter, it seems to perform pretty well. It seems to hold up not too bad. It does spread some, but it doesn't feather all over. Completely legible underneath. When I look at the water, it pulls the blue that exists in this ink, only leaving that kind of peppermint green behind. Now, Pen Flush does much more pulling up of the color than the water did. We can see the dots of the rhodia paper through what remains. Given more than 30 seconds, this would completely remove it from the page. But again, that water was only 30 seconds. Bleach is obliterating it, but what's interesting is as the bleach smeared itself around it, I don't know what happened when I was picking it up, but we get a big blue patch. So the green comes off much faster than the blue. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5 with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. And Private Reserve's Blue Suede has a viscosity of 2.2, a very normal flow to this ink. To find my average dry time, I use my writing samples of the extra fine and medium nib done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. And Private Reserve's Blue Suede has an average dry time of 17 seconds. Average. Actually, average. It is the average number. It is exactly in the center. Now let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I use a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, lots of shading. You get to see it straight through in the suede. A little bit in the blue. In the E to R on Reserve, so we do get some shading right there. On the extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Not a ton of shading. Not a ton of shading here. It's almost non-existent. 10 seconds to dry. Medium nib gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Minor shading spots in the quick, in the dog. 18 seconds to dry. Now when I look at the scrubbies, I see almost no color variation in the scrubbies, but I did see spots of it in the writing. Now on the smear, I don't know that you get to recover this. Looking at Tomoe River, we have no bleed, we have ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, and 18 seconds. Medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 32 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us we're going to get no color variation. The smear test shows us we're not going to recover it. This color's not as interesting on this toned paper as it was on the white paper. This blue suede color is a really interesting color, although it's like a teal. It's like a teal that leans towards blue. Much nicer on the white paper than it is on the toned paper. Looking at Rhodia. Rhodia gives us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and definite shading. We see a bunch of shading through the Private. We see it in Reserve, in the blue, and in the suede. All the way through. Nice shading. Subtle all the way. Subtly into dark, subtly out of dark. Nice. Extra fine. Extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It's a lighter tone. It's definitely a lighter tone, but no shading. 8 seconds to dry. Now the medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. Definitely a darker tone than the extra fine. 15 seconds to dry. Now when we look at a scrubby, we don't expect a lot of color variation on this. And the smear test shows us that it's not going to be too recoverable. So it's funny because I'm looking at where I wrote with it with a flexi nib, and I don't see a ton of the color variation. I do see it in spots. I like the color. This is a neat color. So there's not a lot of inks where it's the color that just, something about this color. Maybe it's the singing I keep hearing in my head from, I hear Elvis the whole time. But this is neat. It's the color. It's the color. This is a neat color. It's the color. It's not the shading or the other performances. Sorry. The TWSBI paper has no bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, it has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no real shading. I think this is a tone of the paper. I think this tone of the paper eats up a lot of the shading. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It does give us some minor shading. We see the shading in dog, we see it in lazy, we see it in over, we see it in brown, we see it in dry. So we do get quite a bit of shading through the writing with the extra fine. 9 seconds to dry. But when we go on to the medium, while the tone of the ink gets darker, and that's the only shade that you get to see here. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. None in the medium writing. We do have shade in comparison to the extra fine, but we don't have it within the writing itself. 17 seconds to dry. And looking at the scrubby, the medium has no color variation at all. The extra fine has some. The smear, I don't think you could recover this. So because it was the white paper that made things sort of stand out, I decided to look at this with the white paper. And I'm looking at 20-pound copier paper because that's the one I had this written on. Okay, we knew it was going to bleed. We knew it was going to show through. So that wasn't a surprise. It didn't touch the page underneath, so there's some nice news. The medium that I wrote the top with spread to about a broad, double broad. It didn't feather. So it spread, but it didn't have feather. It has no halo, no sheen, no shade. So I guess that's not horrible, other than the bleeding part. On the extra fine, we have no feather. Shockingly. We have, a little on the L. That's it. No real feather. Because it's the one spot, I sort of ignore it. We have spread. This extra fine looks like a medium. We have no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 1 second to dry. No shading to be seen at all in the scrubby. And look at the smear. Nothing. I couldn't smear fast enough. I pulled out a spare paper and started trying. Couldn't get it to smear. It just sucks straight into the paper. It's not really paper so much as it's a sponge. It's good for cleaning up messes. That's all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Private Reserve's Blue Suede, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. And I've chosen Diamine's Brilliant Red because while it's a red, it's kind of a magenta red. It's a red that leans a magenta-y way. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Private Reserve's Blue Suede? I think this is an amazing color. I love it. Something about it is mesmerizing. It doesn't matter what kind of garbage I'm writing on the page. I like looking at it. It's amazing. I've had to order a bottle of it despite my having certain problems with some Private Reserve samples. I've had to get a bottle of this because the color is just mind-blowing to me. It's amazing. Thanks for watching.